Hello everybody, and welcome to a video on everything you need to know about the artifact of sacrifice. I have been testing it quite a bit the past few days on my stream, twitch.tv/Woolie Gaming, and I've learned way more about it than I would have thought possible before all of the testing began. If you don't know, the sacrifice artifact enables monsters to now drop items, but removes all of the usual chests, multi-shops, equipment barrels, etc. from the stages. Note that 3D printers, cleansing pools, and even your lockbox from Rusted keys will still spawn, and you can also still find the guaranteed chests such as the Prayon's box on Rally Point Delta, the hidden legendary chest on Abyssal Depths, and the 4 regular chests in the Gilded Coast. Other than those exceptions, however, you will not find any regular loot on any stage, as killing the monsters will be your only source of obtaining items. So let's talk about getting those items. What are the drop rates for each rarity? Does it change per monster? How many items can you expect on a stage? Let's start with the simplest one, drop rate. This is the chance of getting each type of item, not the chance of getting an item in general. The drop rate with sacrifice on is actually very close to that of a regular chest. You have a 63% chance to get a common, 27% to get an uncommon, 9% to get an equipment, and a 0.9% to get a legendary. For reference, the regular chests have a 79.2% chance for a common, 19.8% for uncommon, and 0.99% for legendary. Again, these rates are not the chance to get an item, but rather the rate at which you'll see each rarity if the monster were to drop an item. I said earlier that this was the simplest sacrifice effect to understand, and that's because these rates do not change per monster type. So a regular beetle and an overloading worm will have both the exact same 0.9% chance to drop a legendary item. Let's move on now to how the drop chance of an item is actually calculated. Now, the formula for the drop chance has quite a bit going on with it. I'll put it up now, but don't worry if you can't follow along entirely. I'll put up a much easier to understand chart of the drop rates here in a bit. Basically, every monster has a 5% base chance to drop an item, and this chance is scaled up by 2 factors: the monster's spawn cost, defined as credit cost, and the monster's gold and XP reward, defined by reward multiplier. If you didn't know, the systems in-game responsible for spawning literally everything you see have a name: the directors. There are a few different types of directors. There's one for pre-stage spawns, one for while you're on the stage normally, one for while the teleporter is active, etc. Now, I'm not going to go in depth here in this video on how they function, so just let me know if you want a separate video on directors. I can absolutely do that. All you need to know is that when a director is choosing to spawn something, they only have a certain amount of credits to work with, and the total amount of credits they have grows as both the time you spent in the run and your stage count go up. Now, each different monster has a different credit cost associated with them. The harder the enemy, the more expensive they are for a director to spawn. That makes sense, right? The important thing here is to know that monster costs are always the same. The only thing that changes is how many credits each director has. Also, each director has a reward multiplier, which simply determines how much XP and gold their respective monsters will give on kill. Now, I know we're getting a bit into the weeds here, so I will summarize like this. The different directors have different amount of credits to work with, and the monsters they spawn come with different reward values. Therefore, each director, pre-stage, during TP, etc., will affect your sacrifice drop chances differently. That was a very general overview of how sacrifice drop chance is calculated, so let's now get into some actual numbers. First, the base 5% drop chance is the absolute minimum, no matter what. This means you will always have at least a 5% chance to get an item on any kill. Second, the 57 leaf clover does not affect drop chance in any way. Third, there are some extra conditions that lower the drop rate of a monster further than usual. If a monster is pre-spawned, meaning they're on the stage as soon as you teleport in, killed while the teleporter is charging, or is the TP boss itself, then their drop rates are all lowered, each by different amounts. Which, that makes sense, right? Because remember, the director in charge of the teleporter is different from the regular stage, and that TP director has more credits to work with, so there has to be some sort of reduction to the TP reward to avoid a huge discrepancy. But alright, enough talk about formulas and math and other pointless things. Let's just look at the actual drop chances, right? Here's that chart I was talking about earlier. I'm not going to go through each and every monster here, obviously. Instead, there will be a link in the description to this list so you can see the numbers for yourself. Notice how generally the harder, quote unquote, the monster is to fight in the game, the higher their drop chance is. Everything lines up with what I think as the hard enemies, except for Greater Wisps being harder than the Clay Templars. Like, what the heck is that? Now, at this point, you may be wondering, what happens if I use the artifact of swarms? Does that double spawn rate give me double the items? Well, yes and no. If we look back at the formula using the artifact of swarms, we see a nice little divide by 2, which would seem to cut the drop rate in half. So you could then presume that the swarms half drop rate, but the double spawn rate would cancel one another out and be the same as using sacrifice by itself. But do you know what artifact of swarms Swarms does not touch? The minimum drop rate. Yup, that means you're getting double the monsters to spawn and you're keeping the same 5% drop rate minimum. And if we take a quick look back at the chart here, which of these monsters are you seeing the most of early on? That's right, beetles, lesser wisps, jellyfish, and lemurians. For the first 3 stages, the vast majority of your monsters will be one of those 4. Now, instead of me going through and trying to explain exactly how swarms affects drop rate, as in the number of items you can actually expect to see with and without swarms, allow me to just show you. The keen eye would have noticed that the background footage has been of a sacrifice and swarm run. Notice how many items I have around the 7-minute mark. Now, here's what a run looks like without the artifact of swarms. No, this is not me cherry picking the worst sacrifice run I had and then comparing it to the best sacrifice plus swarm. This is what they all looked like. The difference swarms makes is absolutely astounding. Normally, I'd be lucky to just get 1 item before the teleporter bots without swarm, but with it, oh boy, it feels like loot is just raining from the sky. It feels amazing, seriously. You need to try it out. Swarms and sacrifice feels so good. Now, yeah, sacrifice by itself also feels great, only outside of the early game, however. Once you get a run going, you will absolutely start seeing loot pour out of the monsters, but the fact that it doesn't perform well by itself early on means that swarms is a must pick with sacrifice to me. However, note that swarms only cuts monsters' HP in half and not their damage. So by doubling the spawn rates, you need to pick a survivor that can handle large groups of enemies early on with no help from items. I've actually found that Huntress is the best overall pick due to having great single target, great AoE, and great mobility, all 3 of which are necessary to have when dealing with tons of monsters. Also, I'll leave you with a final gameplay tip, and that is to rush the early game teleporters. Do not sit around and farm on a stage because, again, the directors get more credits to spawn things as your run progresses, so by sitting around in the first few stages, you are just wasting potential. Why wait? I mean, you can just beeline it to the TP for the first 3 stages, still getting plenty of loot, mind you, and get to the point of loot just dumping all over around you as fast as possible. What do you think of the artifact of sacrifice and especially the sacrifice plus swarms combo? Let me know in the comments below. I'm very curious to hear what you guys have to say. You can check out my stream over at twitch.tv/WoolieGaming and consider joining our Discord server as well. Thank you for watching.